So they're saying that half the nation didn't vote in the last election. We're also seeing some people that have opted out from choosing a master demonized because they don't want to live under the kind of regime that's being planned for the American people. So what are we really looking at here when we see these charts and they say that half the country didn't vote? And what else are we seeing here when we look at such an incredibly close margin in the popular vote between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton? There's something going on here. How many elections have we seen already, past elections, where the margin was that close? See, a lot of people talk about vote fraud. A lot of people talk about electoral fraud. And I've seen some people talk about it when they're using it to their benefit, when it serves them and their political party, their political agenda. And I see far too many people falling for this fallacy that those were real debates between Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. I will assure you now that those were not. Notice how superficial it was and all reactive, he said, she said, in the latest drama, and all that really doesn't matter. What does it have to do with poverty? What does it have to do with foreign policy? What does it have to do with the issues that matter? And so people were caught up in the drama and they were taking sides and people were narrating. It was like some really weird reality show, ironically featuring a reality star himself, Donald Trump. I'll never forget 2003 when that show was on and finding it awkward that someone would enjoy playing that role of telling someone that they're fired and then making a whole show about that. And that's just a short note. And I remember thinking, what a psychopath. And what a traumatizing time to have a show on TV. You're fired, when a lot of people actually lost their jobs in 2002, 2003 after the war started. Kind of a weird time to be insulting the American people. That's what I took from that. And so we see this reality TV star, this man with close connections to the WE. And we see the rigged matches, of course, and the staged fights and the acting. And of course, we see Donald Trump shaving the head of Vince McMahon, bread and circus on steroids, literally and metaphorically. We can also see historically the role of the WE and propaganda. Here we have the Russian wrestler. We have Sergeant Slaughter during the Gulf War waving the Iraqi flag. I mean, literally, they were getting bomb threats during that period because people were so upset that someone was trying to get people rallied up and they had the Iraqi flag. And all that was building up that anger. So that's the world that Trump is already associated with. Are we clear? The WE has played its role in propaganda that had prepped the world for the post 9/11 reality. Now go get them. People want to act like Donald Trump was really against the Iraq War from that staged interview that was so timely placed with CNN in 2003. And then we see the war cabinet being built right now. Ted Cruz is being considered. Rudy Giuliani is being considered for Attorney General. And then another long list of characters that the media is already talking about. Incredibly shady backgrounds. You know, we see a former CIA chief saying that World War III has been averted with the election of Donald Trump. Why is he mirroring the exact same talking points as Vladimir Putin? I'll tell you now, there's a connection between the CIA and the Russian government. You know, there's a guy named Frank Dukes who is the man behind Bloodsport, the movie. And there's a lot of controversy regarding Frank Dukes and whether or not all that happened. But what's interesting about Frank Dukes is that he served in special operations for the military. alongside CIA officers. And in this documentary about his life, which I was watching recently, a lot of his military records have been sealed by the government because he went to Russia in the 70s and 80s and was organizing anti-terror death squads, frankly. And when asked a question by the host of The Voice Versus whether he had ever killed any man, Frank Dukes responded by saying, "That's not a question I care to answer." Put another way, that's a fairly uncivilized question. I remember seeing in a New American magazine years ago that there were articles in 2000 about the FSB and the FBI sharing data on their citizens. And so there's been something going on between these governments that's not really out in the open. And what you see between Barack Obama and Putin is absolutely staged, WE style, when they do a stare down and then everything starts blowing up after that. Oh my God, elect Trump or World War III. What kind of psychological terrorism of the people of the world as Putin tells his people to get down the bunkers? They're being prepped for something. It's not happening tomorrow, but they're prepping their populations for a staged, managed World War III scenario that I've been talking about since 2008. I haven't deviated into fake conspiracy news or things that are going to get me more hits or things that are going to be more popular with some of you. I've stayed on, even though it's been unpopular and in some cases unbelievable, the same path of exposing this fabrication of a global third world war that will result in the expansion of the New World Order. It's actually very frightening, and I would be frightened to be a person that's run around hurting people because karma's real. And there's something about this that is profound and deep. You know, I don't get up on here and record these podcasts and put these out here to frighten you. I want to help you see through the show that's taking place. They're setting the scenario for a civil war, a white civil war, if you will, but of course other groups thrown in, between the left and the right, and this is absolute insanity. And so we come back down to where we started. They're telling us that the margin was that close. They're telling us that half the country didn't vote. I don't know. There's a lot of people that are really pro-Trump. There's a lot of people out there that are really pro-Clinton and pro-Sanders. And, you know, they put up those numbers. Where's Sanders? I'm not saying I'm for him. You know, I see the graphic with a Trump. Okay, there's Clinton. Oh, there's Gary Johnson way down there. But it's like, whoa. And see, they've been doing this to the left and to the right for some time. 2012, the RNC, they gave it to Romney. They literally took it away from the Ron Paul delegates. I was there for that in Tampa Bay, Florida, supporting Ron Paul and staying in an RV, actually. A group of us rented, and we drove from Dallas, Texas, where I was living at the time, to the Vets for Ron Paul camp. Not a vet myself, but was there to document video, and you can find that at alexansary.tv under the travel section. My RNC adventure. And so I remember what it was like to see the Ron Paulers disappointed, to have that taken away from them. But I also wasn't surprised by that. I like Ron Paul. I thought it was strange to see him bring out Ted Cruz to support Rand Paul before a live audience at the Austin Capitol, at which I was present at as well, in the summer of 2012. So I was there supporting. I was also blogging, posting, making videos about some of the strange things that I was seeing without necessarily attacking Ron Paul, but looking at all these things going on around him, including Jesse Benton. And then, of course, we see where Jesse Benton went on to serve McDonald, who's a neocon. And then we saw the connections between Mitt Romney and his family members and the Ron Paul campaign and a little bit of going back and forth. This all happened. And I say that with support of Ron Paul's message, but there were still things going on behind the scenes. And so we should be able to look at the things that don't seem really right, even if we support someone. Doesn't mean that we're attacking them. It means that we realize that we're in a rigged game. And even if you support someone, there's no point in blind worship of someone. That's not what leads us towards liberty, either in our own lives or in the world. That leads to tyranny. You know, it was said years ago when Bush was the president, even if the president was an angel, you wouldn't want to give them all those dictatorial powers and executive orders and build up this giant surveillance society. Because even if that leader that's elected by the people, be it popular or very unpopular, it's really all about handing it over, the baton of power, to the next puppet. And those executive orders remaining firmly intact. How many executive orders did Obama change when he came into office regarding the Patriot Act or other things? And then we saw the appointment of Monsanto to the Agricultural Department. So we see over here with Trump a mirror of that. And like with the Obama supporters, there was great denial then about Obama not being who he really was. And the same thing is already happening with the list already being public regarding the considerations that Trump has for his cabinet, for all the positions. And then you look at the resumes, you look at these individuals, these are not people from the Liberty camp, ladies and gentlemen. These are hardcore neocons, and they are lining things up for something big. Will it be the staged assassination of Donald Trump? And it would be staged. Donald Trump wouldn't be going along with something where they're just going to kill him. He's going along with something in which he's very confident of his actions, just like Obama. And there were a lot of fears then they'd stage an assassination of Obama. And there's concerns now that Obama's going to force through a third term. But the same thing was said about Bush. And what I'm saying to you is it's not really necessary. They've got us in this divide, left-right mindset with other distortions thrown in and fake news. And of course, some of the fabrications that we're all shifting into a new dimension, and the people that are elected now are actually beings of the Galactic Federation of Light. And there's that disinformation that I have identified on the web as well. That's right, identifying Putin and Trump as walk-ins from the Ashtar Command. So when you see aspects of disinformation, the fake channeled stuff, throw their weight behind this as well for those people that want to have some hope, people that respond to leadership, people that respond to Putin taking off his shirt and literally riding a horse. You know, people have a biological response to seeing someone, a leader, show some strength, a strong posture, a judo throw, posing in front of a missile launch pad. See, I've been noticing this with Putin for a long, long time, and now with this Trump thing, it's very clear that they're there to build a new world order and bring it to the next level. And there are a lot of rigged elections that are behind us that have already paved the way for where we got today. We look at Putin, and we look at how all the protesters of Vladimir Putin over the years have been demonized as those paid by George Soros. And now, knowing that all those Portlanders aren't paid by George Soros, and that's part of the Portland culture for Portlanders to protest, especially when a Republican is voted into office. To see that type of disinformation, it should cause us to question what we were told about every single Putin protester. I mean, there's a fair amount of corruption going on in Russia and human rights violations that aspects of the so-called liberty movement in the West apparently is choosing to not look at. And so presidents, prime ministers, dictators, they're selected and they're appointed. This whole idea of us voting, it's really, this election was really about dividing the American people. Share this podcast with your friends and family. Help people awake. Support my work. I'm Alex Ansary, signing off November 16th, 2016.